Hello, this is Oscar Sanchez. I'm going to explain the contract to you today and give you some advice on the things that you'd probably want to keep in the contract and then your options in terms of presenting the offer. So the contract that we're going to use is just a 1 to 4 family single residential house contract. Um, there it is. We use this same contract for single properties, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And since Barry's a fourplex, we're going to use this one. Although a lot of people think we need to use a multi-family unit contract, that's not the case. And then you said you're going to get a loan. You're getting a loan, excuse me. So we're also going to need a third-party financing addendum. Basically, anything that's an addendum basically states that this document will coincide or be included with the subject contract. So let's pull up the first one. The items that are not too important, I'm just going to skim over. If you have questions, you can go ahead and let me know. Paragraph 1 describes the parties. So it's going to be buyer and seller's information, your name, and the seller's name. Number 2, this is the legal description. So like 1 and 2, you really don't have a choice because you're buying a specific property and the legal description is specific for that property. 4, or actually part 3, this is your sales price. You're getting a VA loan. So let's say you offer 200, you put 200 or 0 for the cash portion and 200 for the loan amount. Part 4, you're basically saying, I'm going to get financing. So we'd click this, put the loan amount, and click this one that says this contract is subject to property being approved for a loan. So that if the loan falls through or the property doesn't meet the loan requirements, such as structure, sanitation, or insurability, then you won't be obligated to move forward and you'll be able to receive your earnest money back as your debt or as your I don't want to say default remedy because you're not defaulting. You'll be able to receive your earnest money back since the property doesn't meet the lender's requirements for your protection. Paragraph 5 talks about the earnest money. Earnest money is basically money that's held at a title company. It is held at the title company so that the title company can remain unbiased and follow the contract to the letter. So it doesn't matter what either party says, they're only going to follow the contract. So if you back out for a term in the contract or a paragraph in the contract that doesn't really need approval, such as your option period, you can back out for any reason within X amount of days. The title company should just go ahead and give you your earnest money without any additional documentation. If there's a dispute in the contract, state of Texas would like all parties to go to mediation versus court. Mediation's cheap, it's fast, results are usually within a day. Paragraph 6 describes who pays for the title policy, and it's going to be the seller. In Texas, the seller normally pays the title policy. And then we're going to go ahead, this section right here, it says if there's any discrepancies, conflicts, or shortages, will not be amended. We're going to go ahead and say will be amended. You can put will not, but I'm recommending that you do. And you can also include it as a seller's expense. Survey, there is a survey on the property, so you can choose to get a new survey, or you can reuse the old survey. We would like to reuse the old survey because no changes have been made since the time of purchase. So I would click here within 10 days, and if the survey is not acceptable by the lender, then you can go ahead and say, hey, seller is going to buy a new survey if the lender doesn't accept the existing survey. We don't put anything for part 2 or 3, and we don't put anything for objections, except right here. Well, you know what? We can put the objection says, hey, we're going to buy this property, but if the property is not able to be used for this blank, then we have these amount of days to back out. And so we're going to put residential use here, and then 3 days. It obviously does because it's being leased out, and the City of Dallas has already inspected it. Scroll over to the next page, page 3, under membership in property associations. We're going to put this property is not in a HOA. 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to 9 has to do with taxes, public improvements, transfers of fees, and utilities. So these are, can't change them. These are promulgated by the state of Texas. Paragraph 7, seller's disclosure. If you submit an offer, like for example, if you were to submit an offer today, you would click buyer has not received the seller's disclosure, and within blank amount of days, the seller shall furnish you a seller's disclosure. Seller's disclosure is just a list of questions that the seller are supposed to answer honestly, and this protects you from them knowing about any defects to the property that could be carried on over to you, such as like if they knew the property had termites that they didn't disclose, the seller would be liable. So at this time, I would recommend clicking buyer has not, and then put 10 days to allow the seller to give you that seller's disclosure. Now, the seller's disclosure is just the seller's opinion, and since the seller hasn't lived in the property, he's the manager of the complex, you might want to also get a home inspection. We'll talk about that later. We're accepting the property in its as-is condition because, well, there's nothing that needs to be fixed or replaced at this time. If you do have something or a concern, we do that in our option period. Scroll down to residential service contract. In Texas, we have something in our contracts that allow the seller to give you credit so that you can purchase a home warranty. A home warranty protects the home from mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and some light structural problems if you get extended coverage. An average home warranty for a single family home is roughly $350 to $400. Now, fourplexes, each company will vary in terms of how much it's going to cost, but I believe you have to get one for each unit if you would like for it to be covered. That's $450 times 4. That's a pretty penny. I would recommend keeping that money or having the seller pay closing costs so that you can keep that $2,000 and use it for repair work if repair work needs to be done. Or you could have the seller pay X amount of dollars to go towards your home warranty, and then you'd be covered for 1 year. Home warranty usually lasts 1 year. Some are up to 13 months, but typically they have higher premiums. Right here, 8, it says broker fees. All obligations of the parties of payments of broker fees are contained in separate agreements. So in Texas, the seller actually pays both buyers and sellers broker fees. So no fee shall be assessed to you, except I think there's a transaction fee that's $350 at closing. But that's going to be in your with your lender. He's going to disclose all closing fees and stuff like that. Paragraph 9. This is basically what day would we like to close, and it does say the closing of the sale will be on or before this date, or 7 days after any objections are made in paragraph 6D. Number 10, this is possession. Basically, the possession paragraph describes, hey, when am I going to get my keys after I sign my documents? And we typically put upon closing and funding. There's not a temporary lease because there's nobody living in the property to lease back the home after you close, so your only option really is this one. So once it closes and funds, then all the keys will be released. Now let me explain something. If you close on a Friday and it's 3 o'clock and the funding wires have closed, you may not get your keys till Monday. So keep that in mind. Closing is when you sign. Funding is when money transfers electronically from the lender to the title company. Paragraph 11, special provisions. Here is where if there was something funny that wasn't in an amendment or wasn't in the contract that you could change, this is where you would write it in, such as seller to paint the red door black. It's pretty odd, but we use this very rarely unless there's a form that doesn't exist. Settlement and other expenses. This is where you would request if you wanted the seller to pay a portion of your website. A portion of your closing cost. So let's say your closing cost is $4,000. You can actually put $4,000, and the seller, if agrees to, will pay $4,000 towards your closing, and you should have a zero net balance when you close. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip all this, which is promulgated. Your information, your email will go here, and then the only part of the contract that we're going to add is called third-party financing. And then this other section right here just gives the broker's information. It's really